Hi, welcome. My name's Alan, and I'd like to take a little bit of time and cover for you the 7 steps that have to be done if you want to get results in a home business. And whether that home business is a network marketing or affiliate marketing type thing, or whether you've come up with your own product that you're trying to bring to the market, if you happen to fit into that very wide niche of people who don't have a ton of startup capital, who need effective steps that they can follow to get results, then you want to watch this video. Now, I've been doing this quite a long time. I actually started in the home business space in 97. So that's about, 23 years ago now at the time I'm making this video. And I started online in 2008. And since that time, I've really hardly ever used the phone at all, maybe less than a dozen phone conversations my entire time online. And yet I haven't had to work for anyone else in a very long time. I've managed to become the number 1 enroller in a number of different companies. And I've been very consistent with it, working just a few hours a day. Now, you may not be able to do that, and I'm not trying to brag, nor am I trying to give you any sort of prediction on what's going to happen for you, because there are variables in business, and your results could be different from mine. And any examples I go through with today here, they could be exceptional and not typical. But I can tell you that regardless of what your business is, regardless of what your product is, there are 7 steps you need to do in order to get results. And so when someone comes to me and they say, I've been doing this business for such and such amount of time and I'm not getting results, what am I doing wrong? It's always, always, always an omission or alteration of one of the 7 steps. Always. In other words, there are 7 things you have to do to produce income. If you don't do them, if you don't do one of them, if you don't do 2 or all of them, or any number of them, or you are altering what's involved at each or any of these steps, then you won't get the results. And it's really that simple. So when someone comes to me and they want help, I say, well, give me your statistics for what you've been doing on your 7 steps. Now, before we get into the list of the 7 steps, I just want to walk you through the logic of this. So someone watching this video at this point is interested in what? They're interested in getting sales, right? Getting new enrollments or new sales in their business. And if we just follow the logic backwards, to get a new sale, what would have to happen for the person buying in order to get them to the point where they would be ready and willing to buy? Well, they would have had to have at least seen a presentation about whatever that offer is, right? So whether it's a product or it's a make money online or make money from home type of thing, they had to have been given the information. So we call that presentation. So you'll see here from a presentation page, maybe you're using an online automated type of thing as far as the presentation, as opposed to doing the presentation yourself individually each time, which I don't recommend doing it individually. You want to use some kind of video online, but they would have to come through the presentation first at some point. Now, one of the things I found that people miss, people who are new to this stuff, is they tend to think that if they send people to their presentation page, that sales will come out of that. And I can tell you that that very rarely happens. What happens as far as generating sales is you send them to your presentation page, and then they watch about 30 seconds of the video, and then they go off and do something else. And you send them to your presentation page, and they watch 5 minutes of the video, and then they get distracted and go off and do something else. And then you try to send them back to your presentation page another 20 or 30 times, and they don't open the emails. And then one day they open an email, and they don't happen to be doing anything, and the email reads just right, that it captures their interest, and they click the link, and then they finally watch the video for the first time. Now, from here, again, life gets in the way, and maybe they're ready to buy, maybe they're not. The point is that people very rarely purchase something if it's their first exposure. It just almost never happens. What I find in my business is usually somewhere between about 3 weeks and 3 months. Every so often, I'll have people join me in my business who've been on my mailing list for 7 years or more. Every once in a great while, someone will enroll right off the bat the same day as they see the presentation. Usually, if that's happening, it's because the offer starts on a free trial and they don't have to pay today. Usually anything where they have to actually pay, that doesn't happen right away. It takes some continuing to interest them. Okay, so right off the bat, for all of those of you who have a warm list of people, friends, an email list, and you started your business and you got this great offer and you sent them an email telling them about it, and then you just sat and waited, well, probably not much is going to come of that. You would need to continue to follow up with them every single day or every other day, whatever the frequency is, until they ask to be removed or until they become part of what you're trying to do. Now, I email every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, but not everybody does that. And, there's a lot that you can learn about that aspect of how to do that, but just track with the concept of the flow here. In order to get a new sale, these people have to be gotten through a certain degree of follow-up. In other words, I have to continue to communicate with them, continue to communicate with them, continue to communicate with them until they get to the point where they're willing to actually go through the data and focus on it and learn it. And that's actually how you create interest. A lot of people don't understand that. Well, they weren't interested. Well, how do you create interest? You create interest by communicating about that topic, continuing to communicate about that topic. So in order to arrive at the new sale, sometimes there's a lot of follow-up that's required in between the presentation and the sale. And sometimes during the course of that follow-up, someone will maybe watch the video or read your information, and they'll have questions. So then you have to handle answering the questions, or you have to handle concerns. And people will say all kinds of things like, well, I see in the video, there was 4 or 5 testimonials, and those people were really had amazing results, but why would it work for me? I don't see why it would work for me. Like, I don't have this resource, I don't have that resource, I don't have a list, I don't have this. So the average human being is looking for reasons why things won't work, to try to filter out of their mind all the risk. They want to know everything's a guarantee, right? It's guaranteed. Well, that's not how business works. But the point is that as you're following up with people, the chances are that everyone who joins, who actually purchases or enrolls in whatever you're offering, chances are those will be the people who go back and forth with you with questions or comments in between. So in other words, the first time I expose somebody to my offer, maybe that's on some sort of a web page that captures their contact information and adds them to a contact list, and you follow up with them, right? So right off the bat, when they come through this request here, it sends them, you see this arrow here, it sends them to the presentation. But like I said, usually they don't buy there. But they're on your contact list. So what we do is we use automated email follow-ups, and it sends out a new email every day. And then from the email, assuming that the email is well written and compelling enough, those people may click through and then get back to the presentation page, or to a different presentation page, or to a webinar that you've invited them to from that email. So there are a number of different presentation options you can use. Even you could just be referring people to your Facebook to connect with you. I mean, that might be part of keeping the communication in, because if they know you and they like you and they trust you, then the chances are they'll stay engaged. But in the course of this follow-up, you may find out, like, people who've been through the presentation, some people will watch the presentation 4, 5, 6 times. They're trying to come up with what is it that I'm missing that they don't want to get caught on, right? And I mean, honestly, as long as what you're promoting is ethical and it's serving the interests of, you're winning and they're winning. I mean, they're looking for something that doesn't exist most of the time. But they will reach out to you on Facebook with questions. They'll email you with questions. They'll text you. They'll call you. They'll want to talk about certain aspects of it. There will be things in the presentation that maybe didn't quite make sense to them that they have to get clarification on. So there's a certain degree of handling that needs to happen, usually before they buy. And it's usually those people that you have to handle questions and concerns with that end up buying from you. It's not usually the people who you never hear from before they buy, but that does happen sometimes. Okay? So understanding this, if we work backwards from a new sale, basically the last thing that happens usually before the person enrolls is some sort of handling that you had to do as far as answering questions or handling a concern. Sometimes it's as simple as, well, after I join, then what? What do I do? Which I think is a fabulous question, because every one of you who's in a network marketing offer, you're in any sort of pay it forward offer where part of the deal is they get to promote the products too, and they can earn off those products, and you're promoting any sort of way to earn from home. They're going to come to you and they're going to say, what do I do? And before watching this video, you may not know the answer, but the answer is now, has always been, and always will be, you have to learn and do the 7 steps and apply them, right, correctly. What do I do? You do the 7 steps. Well, by the time we get to the end of this video, you'll know what all the 7 steps are. But working backwards, before the new sale, some handling was required. Handling is step 7. Before the handling, a certain degree of follow-up needs to happen, usually, to get them to the point where they're interested enough to even be asking questions. So follow-up would be step 6. Before you can follow up with someone, you had to have presented them the information in the first place. Otherwise, there's nothing to follow up with or about, you see. So presentation would be step 5. And before they could see the presentation, what would have to happen? In other words, think of someone you know now. They're at home. They're watching TV. How are they going to see your presentation? They don't even know it exists, do they? You would have to invite them first to see the presentation. So before they can see the presentation step 5, invite is step 4. You have to invite them before they can see the presentation. Now this is where most newbies get mixed up, because they don't understand the qualification and invite process. They go right from contacting someone to presenting. And many of you have probably done this. You know, you're all excited about your new business and, you know, your new super juice product or whatever it is. It's got an ingredient that comes from the remote villages of China buried deep in the earth, and everyone in that village, it's in their well water, and they all live to be 140 years old, right? And you want to blah, blah, blah about your wonderful product and how your scientists can beat up everyone else's scientists and so forth. But the fact of the matter is most of you are completely wasting your time. I can tell you I never, ever do that. What it is it's a violation of the sequence of the steps. The steps must be done in sequence. The steps must be done in sequence. So when you do You dial the phone and someone answers and you start doing the presentation, you have skipped over step 2, 3, and 4. So step 4 is to invite them. Before you can invite them, you have to qualify them. Do they even qualify? If you can imagine trying to sell a new Mercedes to a baby, understanding that a baby, 3 months old, no credit, no income, there's no point in trying to tell the baby why the Mercedes is an awesome ride, because that baby doesn't qualify. There's no point in trying to sell a Mercedes to a homeless person. They don't qualify. So if you want to save yourself a lot of misery and frustration and rejection and pain and stress and anxiety, don't go out of sequence. Keep them in sequence. So if I never invite people who don't qualify, I never spend time presenting, that saves me 95% of my time. And I'm telling you, most of you network marketers, most of you are wasting all your time trying to present to people who are not qualified. If you just never invited anyone who doesn't qualify, you could then have the time available to contact 100x or 200x the number of contacts. Weed through those, find the ones who qualify, present to them. Now, your closing ratio's through the roof and you're not wasting time. I find this to be the biggest outpoint, the biggest mistake that newbies make when they're doing this, is they're trying to convince and persuade and sell and explain and present to people who do not qualify. One of the results of this is people say goofy things like, well, talking to your friends and family doesn't work. That's false. But if you don't know how to qualify them, then you're going to run into problems and it's going to be frustrating. Why? Because you invest so much time and intention and focus into trying to convince and persuade them. And then at the end, they just don't get it. And you think, well, what's the matter with these people? I mean, my God, what are they going to work a job the rest of their life? And you end up getting into an argument with people and it just becomes painful. The reason that's happening is because you're not qualifying people. Qualify is step 3. Before you can invite them, you have to qualify them. Are they even the slightest bit open to looking at some information about how to make some extra money from home? Now, there's more to learn about how to do each of these steps. This is just an introduction, but you have to keep in mind something that I call gradients. I take little baby steps. In other words, I'm not asking them if they're open to, would you be open to investing $1,000 into a really hard business that you're probably not going to be able to do? That's not how I qualify them. I'm only qualifying them for willingness to look. I'm qualifying them for the next step. In other words, are they at all open to just looking at some information? If I put some information in front of you, would you be willing to look at it? In other words, I'm not asking them to buy. I'm not asking them to make a decision. I'm not asking them to do anything complicated other than just be willing to look. Now, before you can qualify them, something very obvious needs to be in place, and that is that you have to be in communication with them. That's step 2. Are they willing to communicate? If they're not willing to communicate, obviously you can't qualify them. That should be obvious to anybody watching this. And before you can be in communication with someone, you would have had to have contacted them. What's contacting? You call them, you text them, you email them, you send them a Facebook message, what have you. So we get a flow of steps that go from a general public that has no idea who you are or anything about your offer, and we contact them. And it doesn't matter if you're making phone calls to people that you know or you're hiring a company to put advertising out there for you. One way or another, new people have to be contacted. You can outsource these steps. If I hire an advertising company to do ads for me, I'm outsourcing my contacting, you see? So the flow goes step 1 through step 7 all the way through to new sales. Now, I would say most of the people who get through step 7 turn into a new sale or a new enrollment. Not all of them. But I find it's not very often that someone goes back and forth asking questions and has concerns they're willing to put out there for you to handle if they're not like super interested. In other words, they're there with you, but they just have some things that are getting in the way mentally that need to be handled first. So this, people call this a funnel. It's not in the shape of a funnel, but if you think about a funnel, it's a fat at the top and then at the bottom it's skinny, and you put a bunch in the top and a little bit comes out at the bottom. Well, this process filters out all the people who don't qualify. If we just go through the steps, it filters out all the people who are not willing to communicate, who don't qualify, who wouldn't accept your invite, who won't watch a presentation. Okay, because if they're not willing to communicate, you can't do anything. You can't qualify them. If they don't qualify, you can't invite them. If you can't invite them, you can't present any information to them. If they haven't seen the presentation, there's no point in following up with them other than maybe to make sure that they saw the presentation. And if they haven't seen the presentation and you don't follow up with them, you'll never get the questions or concerns. So now if we look at the list of steps here, we'll blow this up a little bit. So you watching this now, you may have a list already of people that you know. You may not. It doesn't really matter. In order to get a bigger list, you're going to have to contact people. If you have a list now, in order to communicate with them, you're going to have to contact people. So the first step is always contact. Once I've contacted them, what am I trying to do at that point? I'm not trying to present to them. I'm not trying to convince them. I'm not trying to persuade them. I'm not trying to overcome objections. I'm not trying to make them the opponent in a game where it's me against them. I'm not trying to do anything other than the next step. Everyone can do this. You don't have to be a salesperson. You don't have to be good at selling. I'm terrible at selling. You don't have to overcome objections. You don't have to do any of that crap that you read about in these sales books. Just do the thing that you're doing when you're doing it. So I'm contacting new people. Now, if I'm out on Facebook and I'm finding people and I'm contacting them, right? I'm commenting on their post. I'm sending them a friend request, and then as soon as they approve my friend request, I'm sending them a message. What am I doing with that message? Am I writing 5 paragraphs about how wonderful my super juice is or whatever your product is? No, because that would be step 1, step 5, wouldn't it? You have to go in sequence. All I'm trying to do is get them in communication. It doesn't matter what you're communicating with them about. It doesn't matter. Stop worrying about trying to present your product or service or opportunity. Start worrying about doing each step as they come, one at a time. I got a new friend. Hey, great, thanks for accepting my friend request. I saw that picture of those 2 little boys on that post you made on Wednesday. Are those your boys? Right? I'm getting them in communication. If I can't communicate with someone, I can't do anything else with them. If my first message to them is a presentation about my opportunity, I have just destroyed all future communication with that person in 99% of cases. Once I'm in communication with them, then I can qualify them. So I'm having a conversation about those cute boys in that picture. I found out it's their kids. We had some back and forth a little bit. We have a rapport going. Now I can qualify them, and I could say something like, this might not be for you, but I did want to ask you, are you at all open to looking at some information on how to blank, fill in the blank, whatever applies to your offer? They either are or they're not. If they're not, guess what? You're done with that person. There's nothing left to do. You're done right there. And you move on to the next person and you start at 1. So what do we do? Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sometimes we do step 1, step 1, step 1, step 1, right? We reached out to 4 people on Facebook. No one has responded to us yet. That was step 1, step 1, step 1, step 1. We do it again, step 1, step 1. 6 times we did step 1. Now all of a sudden, one of those people responds. Now, for that person, we're on to step 2. Are they willing to communicate? The other 5 are still pending. We did step 1 for the other 5. Only 1 has responded thus far. Sometimes people respond right away. Sometimes people respond in 2 months. It doesn't matter. The number of contacts is relevant or proportional to the number of people who are willing to communicate. If I contact 1 person, the number of people willing to communicate out of that may be 1 or it may be 0. If I contact 1,000 people, the number of people who are willing to communicate is not going to be 0. It's probably going to be somewhere between 200 to 300 based on my own personal experience. Out of 200 to 300 people who are willing to communicate, how many of them qualify? It depends. It depends how well you're specific to your market. But I would say out of 300, I would probably get maybe 80 that qualify. Out of those 80 that qualify, how many accept my invite? Well, what I found is they all do. normally. Now, they don't all follow through with it and watch the presentation, but I can't even ever remember a time where someone qualified and then they said they wouldn't look at something. So that's usually pretty close, but even if it's half, who cares? You're just running the steps, guys. It's all you're doing. You're not doing anything else. You just run them. They don't qualify, on to the next person. Oh, they didn't want to see the information, on to the next person. Out of those 80, I send the presentation to. How many of them will actually watch the presentation? Well, this is where time becomes relevant, because some of them will watch the presentation now. Out of the 80, say 5 of them watch it now, and 75 are left, right? And then 5 more manage to watch it in the next week, and then 5 more manage to watch it in the next month, and so forth. In other words, when you say how many, well, that depends on how long of a time period we're talking about. Understand that that's 15 out of the 80 in this example. That leaves us 65 more people that need to be followed up with. Now, I'm following up with all 80. But I'm going to find that a whole bunch of them just never even watched the presentation, or they never went through the information. This needs to happen forever, this follow-up. As this happens day in, day out, day in, day out, I'm making more contacts. I'm making more contacts. I'm making more contacts. What is my job in this business? My job is to do the 7 steps. When someone comes to you, they say, I just started. What do I do? Do the 7 steps. How do I do the 7 steps? Well, watch this video this guy Alan put up so we could all learn how to do this stuff. Out of these people you're following up with, some of them are going to have questions, and you're going to have to handle them. I can't even put a number there because I don't know what this is, and I'm just guesstimating these numbers anyway. But now let's say you made 10 contacts, and that's all you ever did. Out of those 10 contacts, only 1 or 2, let's say 2, were willing to communicate, and out of those, neither of them qualified. Now, all the rest of these are 0, aren't they? So, Bob joins your organization, and he makes his list of his 10 friends, and he contacts his 10 friends, and only 2 of them responded or qualified. Doesn't matter which. I mean, we could say out of the 10, 8 of them were willing to communicate, but only 2 of them qualified, and none of them accepted the invite or watched the presentation. And now Bob says, oh, what a terrible business. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody likes my stuff. What's Bob's problem? Bob's problem is he gave up doing the 7 steps less than an hour after he started. This would be like you getting a job and quitting between the time you got in your car to drive to work and you got out of your car. You never got out of the car. So how many of these do I have to do? Well, if you're doing this all manually, personal networking like I did when I first started, the numbers aren't going to be able to be as big. They're going to have to be smaller. What I've found is that even some of the top leaders in this business, people who I know personally, 20 seems to be about the point where decent results start to happen. 20 new contacts per day. Now, I'm telling you, if you go out on Facebook and you make 20 new contacts a day and you're good at contacting, which we're not going to get into today, but I mean, the words you're using, the method that you're using to contact people is actually impinging such that they're willing to communicate with you. Out of 20 contacts, you might have 5 live conversations a day, 5 live back and forth conversations. And if you're in an MLM type deal, that's going to be enough for you to become the number 1 enroller in your company if you just maintain it. Now, if you want to start using outsourcing, or you have any sort of a marketing budget, or you have some sort of automation software, you can bump this up to 20,000 a day, 200,000 a day. I mean, there really is no limit. The only limit is the limit of the functionality of the software, the lead gen technology you're using, or the advertising budget that you're using. Now, here's where this whole autopilot income thing that you hear about comes in, where people are making money without doing any work, and that is they're automating each of these steps. So advertising automates step 1. Things that can automate step one. Well, YouTube videos. If you have a ton of YouTube videos and they're compelling and people are finding them, because they'll find them through related videos and things like that, depending on how you make your title and description and so forth. Right? You have leads coming in, you have people finding you and becoming willing to communicate with you through YouTube. You're using your YouTube video to contact people. Same thing on Twitter, same thing on Facebook. Maybe you're buying email ads, solo ads, which is like you rent someone else's email list and they send out an email for you and it has your link, and when they click it, they land on your page. Well, they land on your page here, and if it's compelling, if they're willing to communicate with you, they will put their information in here so that you can communicate with them, so that you can send them the information. That's what this page does. This page asks, are you willing to communicate with me about this? That's what this page is. So when you find a page online that says, hey, we got this information, if you want it, put your information in here, what are they doing? They're asking for your permission to communicate. That's all that page is doing. So you begin to see that the online process simply automates the manual process, and this process can be done via the phone, via text message, via email, via face-to-face interaction, via social media, via paid advertising. It doesn't matter. How you choose to automate each step is up to you. Now, when it comes to automating all these steps, there's a couple, when it comes to doing these steps, there's a couple problems people run into. One is they're not really very good at doing each step. Takes a little bit of practice to get good at qualifying people, because a lot of the people watching this video, they need money. Oh my God, I got to pay the electric bill. Somebody's got to join me. Well, it just doesn't work very well, because now you get involved in the game of trying to convince and persuade people and pressing on them and pushing on them and leaning on them to do something they don't want to do, because you're supposed to be just qualifying them. Would you be open to them? No. Okay, well, they're not open. Forget about it. You're done with that person. There's never any arguing. There's never any conflict. There's never any awkwardness. There's never any anxiety. It doesn't exist when you do this properly. When you find you're running into that stuff, either you just happen to run into someone who's a total a-hole for no reason, or because you're never presenting anything to anyone who's not wanting to see it. So it could be there's a little practice needed on how to do each step. But when it comes to automating each step, now we get into more expenses and more learning stuff. So if I want to automate my follow-up, well, now I have to learn how to do that. Like, I have to learn how to set this up. If I'm doing it online, I have to learn how to set up my lead capture pages and connect them to my contact list, and then set it up so the emails go out, and then how to link the emails to my pages, and then my pages have the right information, and those pages link to my checkout. Right? There's some technology involved now, isn't there? And there's also expenses. So, like, if I want to automatically send out capture leads and email them, that's two at least. Well, maybe one, but usually it's two different companies I have to transact with, because one company I have to get hosting or a combination of web hosting plus page builders to be able to build the pages to use. And then I have to be able to integrate that with my email system. So that's a separate company, right? To separate CRM, a customer relationship management company, email marketing company. I have to integrate with these pages to capture these into my contact list. And then I have to learn how to use that. And maybe this same company, maybe this same hosting account, they have a page builder and you can build your presentation pages on it too. Well, then you need to learn how to figure out how to get the video off of wherever it is and put it on your page. Or maybe you've got a company that gives you an affiliate page and you can use that. And maybe you got a company that does webinars, but there's no way, they can't go from the webinar to buying from you. And they can't go from the webinar to how to contact you. So you see what I'm getting at? There's a lot of, it's too technical. I don't know how to do it. I'm scared. I'm just going to keep working my job. Now, in the past, I've actually sold courses and I sell consulting and different things where I show people how to do this stuff. And as a matter of fact, Most of the people that I find who want to get a home business going, they don't know anything about any of this stuff. And it's a shame. It can be learned, but it takes some work and it takes some time. So when you're very busy and you have a full-time job and you have kids to look after and you come home at the end of the day and you're tired and the kids got to be in the bath and they got to get fed and you finally get them in bed and it's like, I'm ready to go to sleep. I got to get up early and go to work. So people go into these things with the best intentions and then they find they just can't fit it all in. So it has been possible to automate these steps, and I've managed to do that myself. And what I've been telling people is you can fully automate all of these steps except for step 7. Step 7 can't really be fully automated. Some of these steps are very hard to fully automate. 6 and 7, most of my time is spent doing number 6. I'd say 95% of my time spent doing number 6. I automate the first 5 steps, and then the other 5% is spent doing step 7 when it comes to me doing these 7 steps. When I first started online, I did them all manually. I was out on Facebook, I was out on Twitter contacting people. My quota for myself was 5 live conversations per day. That made me one of the top producers in the company that I was promoting at the time. But up until now, it's been very technical and has required a pretty large learning curve to be able to automate these steps. And up until now, nothing has fully automated all these steps. I say until now. But there is something that's happening right now that's been in development for some time that the person who referred you here likely is a founding member of this unique new AI automated system. And that system's called Onpassive. Because you're putting your business on passive, you see. This is the only way that I know of, and I've been doing this since 97 and online since 2008. This is the only way I know of that exists that will fully automate all 7 steps for you so that you can earn without doing anything. It automates the contacting, it automates the communicating, it automates the qualification, it automates the invitations, it automates the presentations, it automates the follow-up, and all the handling. Now, that is not to say that you can't jump in and participate on any of these steps at any time you want to. You absolutely can. And that's not to say that you couldn't continue or begin to do any of these steps on your own in addition to the automation that the artificial intelligence is handling for you. But what I want you to get is for all of those people out there who say, well, I don't know how to do that, and I don't have the time to learn how to do that, and I don't have the money to do that. And Onpassive is taking all those steps and it's fully automating all of them, and it's taking all those different resources that you otherwise would have had to learn to use and would have had to buy separately and jam them all together. It's taking all of those and putting them in one place for one tiny little cost that honestly, once you refer 3 other people, your cost is covered, you're in profit. This is if you do nothing at all. So this is the first time that we've seen in this market where someone like you can get started and have all these steps done for you completely and fully without ever having to lift a finger, and you still get results. Now, what I find when I tell people that, sometimes they go, you mean to tell me that I'm not going to have to do any work and I can still earn? Is that what you're telling me? Yes, that's what I'm telling you. Well, how can that be? I understand your skepticism because, in fact, this is the first time that this has ever existed, to my knowledge. And I've been around. I've looked at people saying I get a dozen new things sent to me every day from people. Hey, look at this. This is the latest and greatest new thing. I've been doing this a long time. I've never seen anything else that fully automates all of this for you. You can take your great-grandmother, whether she understands the 7 steps or does not, plug her in, she does nothing, and she still earns. It's pretty astounding. It's so astounding, in fact, that we've At this moment, we've got about 692,000 members enrolled already just prior to product launch. Now, I don't know when you're watching this. By the time you're watching this, we may have 3 million members. We may have 8 million members. We may be a year out past the product launch. It doesn't matter. So if you're already in a business or you've tried to get involved in network marketing or internet or online marketing or affiliate marketing, and you just haven't been able to make it happen, there's only 7 things, guys. Just make a list. What am I doing to contact people? What am I doing to find out if they're willing to communicate? Or am I getting in communication with people? What am I doing to qualify them? Put your stats down. I'm contacting 50 people a day, and none of them have been willing to communicate. The next day I contacted 50, and none of them were willing to communicate. Well, something's going wrong there on your contact. Something you're doing or saying or writing is not working. So by looking at the stats, you now know which thing to tweak. And you can take this 7-step formula and build whatever business you want to build. I've done it over and over and over again with more than 20 different offers in just the last few years. And every single offer I do it with, I make money. These steps are not steps that I just made up or pulled out of the air. They exist because you're dealing with human beings, and they represent the logical flow of one point to another in order to take a person from a complete unknowingness about what you're even doing or that you exist up to a point of interest where they're willing to transact with you. And I hope you take this information. If you're committed to something, I hope you take it and you learn it and you really knock it out of the park and share it with everyone in your organization. Make sure everybody knows that all they have to do when they come to ask you is just do the 7 steps. Give them this video or explain the 7 steps to them. I don't care. Once you understand it, then it's yours, isn't it? But if you'd like to have it all done for you, even if you could be making $10 million a year now in something that you're doing. Now you've got a totally separate thing you can just activate, and it will just run for you, and it will do all 7 steps. You don't have to lift a finger. You don't have to spend any minutes other than maybe every once in a while you could log in and withdraw funds when they're available. Now, I can't tell you how much you're going to make. I can't tell you how fast it's going to be. There's variables in business. The examples I'm giving you may be hypothetical, may be exceptional and not typical. I don't have that data to hand, but I am required to give you an earnings disclosure. I should also mention this video is not presented by nor endorsed by the admin or ownership of Onpassive themselves. I'm just a independent founder of the company. And this information you use or not use at your own risk, but whoever sent you to this video wanted to try to do something to help you. And whether you become a founder or a user of Onpassive now or in the future, that's not relevant to you using these 7 steps in your own business or whatever else you do. So I thank you very much for your time. I thank you very much for your attention. If you want to get some more information on Onpassive, reach out to the person who sent you to this video. Okay? Thank you very much for your time. We'll talk again soon. Bye.